So just one more speaker before a break, ladies and gents, and I'm delighted to introduce Britt RONNEBRO, Superintendent for the Swedish National Police, National Crime Advisory in Sweden. Fascinating speaker. I've only ever seen her on team and Zoom calls. I'm delighted that she's here in reality. But also for the London Policing College, what Britt has brought to us. She's a very senior member of the Executive Board of the International Police Association. And she has introduced us to colleagues in so many other countries around the world through her RPA networks and helped us in the college grow and develop networks around police education. So, fascinating about Britt. Welcome.
Thank you. So, good morning, everyone in the room, and good morning, everyone on the Zoom, or whatever time you got. I'm very pleased to be here in London for the first time since, well, actually February 2020. And you know the background to why we couldn't travel. So hopefully I can bring something new to you on behalf of the Swedish Police and the International Police Association and the International Education Center of Gimbon in Germany. I represent all these three today, but however I will speak first a little bit shortly about the workshops we had during October, and a summary of that. We looked at how the education had been changed for police cadets and also further training in policing, and it was a mutual agreement, I would say, that we all had to move online, and we keep on doing this today, even more than we ever did before, and we learned through the pandemic how to deal with the online training. Another thing that also happened was that we looked at different kind of crimes and how they started to change over this time. And what I'm going to present today is the latest from my own country, and also give a little brief overview international as well. So we will look at the misconception that the number of crimes is increasing, and also how this affects our leadership, both political and also in policing. So there are a number of questions that need to be answered. I'm not sure about it. I will give you the total answer of today, but at least you can have a little thought around it. Because we get facts in what is called a Swedish Crime Prevention Council from them every year in a survey that is handed out to quite a large number of citizens of the country. And we also need to know why there is a citizen misconception that the numbers of crimes always is increasing, and how this affects the Swedish police and law enforcement, of course, and authorities at all when it comes to the legal authorities. And also what will happen the day we can open the communities back after the pandemic. So the first question we will look at this survey, very briefly through it. It's conducted more or less every year. It used to be a paper version from the very beginning, moved over to be paper and telephone. And now due to the pandemic, it's also now on paper or online. And about 200,000 citizens are approached in the age group from 16 to 84 years. And 74,000 did answer, and it's based on their answers, all the facts that I will give to you. You will have online, it's a possibility to go into the Crime Council and look at the kind of summary in English as well, if you would like to read further on to this, how it is in my country. So interesting is that for 2021 in this one, 20.2% of the population saw themselves as victims of crime or any kind of offense. And it is a decrease comparing to the years before, and particularly if you look at 2019, just two years back in time, it has been a decrease that is notable, but still people believe there is an increase of crime. And this is self-reported. So we can't look at the same figures if you look at what is reported to the police, because the police are the ones that take all the reports that are claimed to be a crime that is committed against a person or a property, whatever it is. But when you self-report, you will see there is a decrease in crimes. One explanation could be that when we look at these facts is that we changed our pattern. In many countries around the world, we had a lockdown. Different times, sometimes just a few weeks, other times it been several months, a lockdown. In Sweden, we had no lockdown. We had recommendations to work from home if possible. We had recommendation to keep the social distance, of course. And we also had the recommendation to not gather together with other people. So we spent more time out in the forest, out walking, hiking, whatever it was on every free time. But we could freely move around the country. We had for a short time a restriction to keep ourselves within our health service area. And that's a county, and the counties are very large compared to the UK counties. So I would say I could travel 250 kilometers one way, and I still would be within my own health service. And I could travel another 220 kilometers, and I would still be within my area. We can also say that this is a temporary nature, of course, because we believe that we are heading out from this COVID-19 over and over again. And we see the new wave coming in. Of course, now we're facing the fourth one in some of the countries in the world, and other countries are facing the second one. So it depends on where we are at the moment. However, we can also see it's a break of the normal trends, and the pandemic made this break in the trends. There have been, of course, limited opportunities to meet and socialize due to the recommendations also in Sweden. We had lockdowns in the neighbor countries, and we had closed borders as for many other countries around the world. But still, we could move, and crimes could be committed. We got a reduction in crimes. We could see an increase when it came to crimes online, that the criminals use the internet more frequently than ever before. And the issue went to be that we also spent more time on the internet. We could see that those born during 1950s, 95% of the population spent time every day on the internet during the past 18 months. And that's a survey that was presented yesterday. So I couldn't bring this into my presentation on today, but I can tell you that obviously the people from the 1950s, I'm myself born during the 1950s. So I know the frequent of time that I spend on internet to find information and also to work. And when I'm logged on, I'm still will be on internet, and I can be a target. And this is also one of the things that people are extremely afraid of, to become a victim on the internet, because they don't know really how to protect themselves. So the self-reported, we could see that it was a decrease, and we in general could see a reduction in crime. So why is there still then a fear of crime? And if you look at it, we can see that people mostly are seeing themselves as being victims of crime, even though there isn't anything. It's just by history. You go back and you think that something happened 20 years back, a murder, for example, and you still will remember it was something really upsetting in your life, and that particular address will always be presented as the place where someone was murdered, or a robbery of the bank. We still speak about a small town in Sweden where we had 3 bank robberies at the same morning. And this town went to be famous because 3 years later they had 2 bank robberies at this little town too. So this is the place where they always rob the bank. So if you go back now, 17 years later, and you go into a coffee shop, people will speak about this. And that's the way we look at our world around us. And it's also how the media is reporting everything to us. When this survey looked at it, the situation of today, they had also to decide that we need to approach a random sample of another 10,000 people to look more deeply into why we look at ourselves as being victims of crime, the fear of crimes, and what is behind this. And this will now be conducted during the November and into December. So hopefully we will get the answers fairly quickly in the beginning of next year. I normally think that people are quite sure about that they know what is reported, but the fear of crime, and if you look at the picture over here, you can see that a small little boy could end up to be the big fear, depending on how we look at them and how we believe what they are carrying around. This is also a problem also for us as police officers when we work around most of the time. Well, we could see when it comes to fear of crime that there is a larger number of women afraid when it comes to crime. It's not a big increase, but still it's an increase above what men. If there's 81% of the women that are afraid of crime, it would be 78 when we talk with men. These figures are very close to each other, but still we know that women are more likely to be afraid, and they are more likely to change their behavior in daily life. They avoid to go out certain hours, they avoid to go to certain addresses that might be something that they are afraid of. And I'm not really sure something is why they are afraid of these places. And this is also one of the things that we as police need to work quite frequently with when it comes to other stakeholders. We can also see that the age group 16 to 84 been more victim of crime and are more afraid of crime when it comes to the internet, as I mentioned earlier. When it comes to reported crime in Sweden, well, we normally say that this is a country with low figures. We're 10.2 million inhabitants, and it's 1.57 million crimes reported during a year, and this is the number for 2019. We could see a slight increase of 1% for 2020. It's not a large number when we look at the big increase of the citizens in the country, or people living in the country. We had a major increase of the population 2015 until today due to the immigrants and the big flow from a lot of countries around the world. And we didn't increase the number of police officers, but we increased the numbers of citizens in the country. And if you look then, if you think about that, we moved from 9.8 million to 10.2 within very short time. The increase of number of crime is not a warning sign to anyone due to this. We could also see that we had a drop when it comes to reported crimes when it came for fraud, for example, a -11%. And we also had a small increase of theft, 3% during this time. And when it comes to different kind of theft, of course, this went to be moved from normally properties where people live to properties where people normally are working, due to the fact that during the pandemic we've been working at home, so we could protect our properties in a totally different way that compared to what we could do in 2019. We had an increase of 2% of crimes that was reported against a person. This increase is not a big warning sign for 2021, but still it is. And we can see that the numbers of crimes that is increasing is the crimes that is domestic violence, and also crimes against children in their own homes. Abuses, neglect, and sexual abuses, it's a slight increase. And this we share with a lot of other Western world countries. due to the fact that people being locked in together in their homes in longer times than they've ever been before. We normally speak about the football matches in the UK, that when the team loses, the wife will be beaten up when the supporter come home because he's not happy about it. This is a joke in Sweden. I don't know if it's a joke at all to laugh about, but this is something that in the research been showing. We have also seen exactly the same in my own country, that now that people are more together, this is an increase. The normal increase would be during holiday time, when you are kept together and you're not normally socializing as much with your family during the rest of the year as you do during holiday time. And this hasn't been a holiday. It's been a frightening time for many of us, and frustration can come out in violence as well, not the only other kind of frustration, of course. So when it comes to misconception, as I mentioned earlier, we can see this, that this is something that is the majority of the population every year reporting in this survey when we look at it. I have been trying to look at other countries around the world and see if there is some kind of equal way of looking at crimes that is always increasing. And I found this one, the picture on your right-hand side from USA. There is a decrease in crime. There has been a slight increase in all of the crime level coming up, but still a drop the last year. The last 2 years there have been a drop. And we can also see there has been a drop also all through when it comes to property crime and also violent crimes. But still, if you speak to people in the USA, like in Sweden, they will tell you that there has been an increase. That is how they feel about it. So it might be that people are thinking about their childhood to be a very nice time. It's the golden time. Everything was very good. Everything was absolutely fantastic. And then they start to read the newspapers and look at the television, and they see all this violence reported. And from this, you make yourself to be able and to take in, and then you do not ask the questions around it. And then you will have the misconception that crimes are increasing. In general, we can say that this is the same for Sweden, for England, for Italy, for USA. And it's a global way to look at it as well, because during the pandemic, we had less restrictions in Sweden, but we could see the decrease, a slight one coming with the crimes. But this was also in the countries with lockdown. It was a decrease, but when we speak with the people, they still believe there is an increase. So the increase is domestic violence and child abuses. We had a slight increase in Sweden when it came also to group violence, what you sometimes call gang violence. This has been written in a lot of newspapers around in the world regarding Sweden with the shootings. And also we had the loss of one police officer this summer that also went to be the target during this group violence. We don't like to call them the gangs because they are not really formed into gangs. They are moving between the groups. So that's why we use the group violence term instead. We've seen an increase in Sweden also when it comes to cyber-connected crimes. But those three together do not make an increase in total of reported crime. So we had a decrease, but still we believe as human beings that there been an increase. And when you go back to your own countries and look at it, you probably will find the same. I also took out the figures when it came to murders in some of the countries. We are at the same level still as we have been in the past years, and this was also reported for 2020. Canada reported an increase, but when I went in to look at their figures, it's one more murder 2020 compared to 2019. So one murder is a big increase when you speak with people in Canada. So you need to put the question forward, what was actually the increase? In Germany, they had an increase of 3.7%. And that's basically murders that is committed in domestic violence. And you had a dramatic increase in USA, 10% increase. And that can be something can make people quite worried about what is going on. And you can also see the reasons behind it. You got the pandemic, the protests against the police brutality. We all know about this from USA. And we also know the different regulations on guns and knives in countries around the world. So we need to find evidence-based solution. I'm not going to go through all this because you will be able to get the slides. But if we look at it, some evidence are there that we need more police officers. This is true for Sweden and England, because we are low in numbers in both of the countries. I just recently learned that they are low in numbers also in Germany comparing to the population numbers. This is what we need to have a look at. We also need to know that we need to start to use evidence-based policing, like hotspot policing, problem-oriented policing. If we do not work according to what can be told, what is working, we will fail, and we will lose the trust in the public. There has also been quite a lot of discussions about this stop and frisk or stop and search thing. It's not an issue in Sweden. It's an issue in UK, obviously. It's an issue sometimes in Germany. It's an issue in USA. And I really don't know why it's not in Sweden, because we also got a very flavorful population as it is of today. What happened is also that a lot of programs been closed down during the pandemic. All this kind of supporting programs that used to be a possibility for those that are walking on not really solid ground was taken away due to lockdown. Of course, people do not feel well if that is also what will happen to you. In the survey, we also could look at the trust in or confidence in the police. We could see that we had an increase in the trust during the pandemic. And it was an increase of 4%. So 58% of the population feel that they got a good confidence in the Swedish police. We can also see that when it comes to be treated well by the police, 47% believe that we treat them very well. And I think that is very good figures for a country as of Sweden of today. We could also see that it's a good confidence in the public prosecutor. And we also got reasonably good confidence into the courts, 31%. This is also an increase comparing to the years before. And I think what happened during the pandemic is also that they could see that these governmental and law enforcement did their work according to what was expected. And we kept on following the same route as we had done before. We tried to implement evidence-based policing. Even though it goes very slowly, we still implement evidence policing already from the basic training and into the further training of police officers. And it's discussed on the work site quite frequently, and it also affects the prosecutors, and it affects also the court, the results that it is then given out. However, when it comes to the confidence in the prisons, are not as good, keep on the same level. Of course, no one would like to go to prison, so why should we trust them? But I think it's basically more about the outcome when you've been there and you will be released. What will happen? The full arrangement around that when you will be released on probation and you feel that you're not trusted any longer as a citizen and you won't get a work, you will be unemployed for a long time, and so on and so on. And so the rehabilitation in the prison is not the best, even though we do our best in the country to try to do a good work when they come to this. So what will now happen when we come back to hopefully after the fourth, fifth or sixth wave, if you read the history, you need to go all through all the six before we will recover as people on the earth, and it will take time. But what will happen? Well, I'm pretty sure that we will go back to the same, what we call normal levels of crime. So what is the normal levels of crime? Well, that is when we accept that crime are committed. There is no normal way to accept crime, but still we need to accept that the crime will be committed. And as long as we are not afraid of crime, there will be a normal. The socio-economical situation also for criminals, they need to recap, of course. So we will maybe see a small increase that is shocking for us when we reopen back, but it still will go back to normal, what we can accept and what we would like to reduce. Unemployment is something that we also will face, and unemployment also bring more crimes. We know that since before. One of the things that we need to be very clear about is how will the media report all these crimes? Because the way the media report crimes will also put us in a situation to fear crime in larger numbers than we did before. So we need to be very clear about that the media, how they choose to report, is also our way of looking at our world after the pandemic is over. Political leadership and also the police leadership. We need to change the police because a lot of things been now moving over to the digital world. The political leadership need to understand our needs within the police, that we need new talents, new skills into the police that we didn't have before. And it need to be decision that is made fairly quickly. To keep the confidence with the citizens, we also need to have a good focus on prevention and reduction of crime. And because the public itself has no interest to investigate a lot of money into crime prevention. We can see this in my country, we can see this in many, many countries around the world, that they would like to use the money for totally different other things than to protect themselves with a lot of equipment that they pay a lot of money for, and they can't see the needs of it fully until they are the victim of crime. So if we work together with the politicians, the police, the politicians and the stakeholders for serious, then we will find the goal, the golden time, and we will keep crime on the normal level, hopefully with evidence-based solution, of course. Question the media, validate what they write, and misconception, we need to live with it, but we also need to tell this is not the actual truth. This is the way you think it is when we speak about it. So I would like to say thank you to the audience here and the audience online for listening to me, and hopefully you learned something new today. Thank you.
Britt, thank you. Thought-provoking as ever, and I could listen to my Britt all day long, and nice to listen to you in the flesh, as it were. We're tight for time. Are there any urgent questions? I can take a question or two, but my Britt will be one of our discussion panels this afternoon, and I'm sure we'll return to many of these issues in the course of time. Any questions now? One over here.
In terms of mental health services within Sweden, here we see quite a lot of pressure, especially following and during the pandemic, on our mental health services, and that obviously then has a knock-on effect on policing. Is that something you're also experiencing?
Well, we also in the Swedish police got a big challenge when it comes to the mental health. We try to educate our police officers basically, and also for the training. We've been facing quite a lot of release during the pandemic of patients that been suffering from it. And of course, we had just recently a big discussion around how to predict who will be a violent person or not. unfortunately, we had two cases that have really been upsetting the public due to people that have been searching for support and had basically part of it, but not fully supported. So I think this is something that we all will face due to the pandemic, but this is something that we live within, daily life. And people that normally wouldn't suffer from mental issues will be seen today because they've been locked in, and we've been having a really social interaction that was not on a normal basis. Looking at our friends on the screen without legs is very strange to us, and having flat people to hug is not the same thing either. They are very cold on the screen. So with less contact to other people, there will be more issues. And we are trying to understand and how we can police the question, but this is the health service that need to be extended. And in one of the articles, Sunday, one of the national newspapers highlighted this, that also the health service need to increase the number of people that are educated into it and can take care of people when they ask for help, because they normally walk to the hospital or the health clinic and ask for help, and we need more people that know how to support them.
Margaret, thank you. I'm going to stop it there, ladies and gents, just because of time. Margaret will be with us this afternoon.
Thank you.
I find that somewhere in the